imagine you're in the middle of your city. There are big office buildings. These are tall structures full of people wearing suits, performing professional tasks, sitting at desks. There's roads, thoroughfares for vehicles. There are front lawns, private green spaces for the recreation of the homeowner. There are parks. That is a real park in Vancouver. Also a green space, but now a public amenity. And there are brownfield sites, abandoned factories. These are pretty common features for all cities these days, and the definitions that I just gave are also widely accepted. But what if we rethought the ways in which these spaces performed? What if we tweaked it a little bit, and we did it in ways that embraced the imagination and the environment? Now, I am a professional pedestrian. We have those in Canada. I'm a walking tour guide in my hometown of Vancouver. And so I don't just pass through the cityscape on the way to an office. It is my office. And so I feel the changes in the city, not just in their built form, but also in what they reveal about us. Because the shifting landscapes of the city are also the physical representation of a shift in our values and our priorities. It represents a change in our concerns and our consciousness. And I'd like to explore that today by looking at some of those examples that I just gave. First, let's go back to the past, though. Let's look at the shared historical narrative between Jacksonville and Vancouver. We've got thousands of years of rich indigenous history uprooted in that moment of European contact. You then have early colonial trade. It grows into a settler colony. We accidentally burnt the whole thing down. Then we have to rebuild it back again. Industrialization, modernization, and of course today with the port economy, with shipping and tourism. I could be describing either place. So what happens next? Let's start with the central business district. This is usually an area of any city that's known for being, kind of claustrophobic. It's got these big, foreboding glass towers, these really sterile concrete valleys. But a few years ago, we started to inject public art into these previously drab areas of the city. And here's the best part. We make the developers pay for it. So now, any new rezoning in downtown Vancouver, the developer has to contribute $1.81 per square foot to a public art project on that site. Now think of the size of most of these new buildings downtown. Think of the size of most of these buildings now downtown. That equates to a huge amount of funding going into public art projects in the area now. Now, public art is nothing new. What's interesting here is that there is political will to enshrine it into our development policies. What it's saying is that we value the enrichment of the public's lives through arts and culture in conjunction with commercial development. So you have arts and commerce in tandem. And what that's equating to is some very interesting new hybrid spaces. So take, for example, this lobby. This is the lobby of a major bank, but it's also a public atrium, meaning that the public have right-of-way in the same way that they would in a public park. And trust me, in a city that rains 200 days of the year, it's nice to have some parks that have roofs over your head. It's also an art gallery, free admission, with rotating exhibitions. It also has one permanent installation. It's a 7-story pendulum that swings over the heads of the people inside this corporate lobby, public park, and free gallery, all in one. Just down the street, this is at the base of the tallest tower in the city, a 62-story building. And the developer had to give a $2.5 million endowment to a public art space at the base of the tower. It's also got temporary installations. This one was there all summer. It's called Time to Let Go by Babak Golkar. And so it encourages pedestrians as they walk underneath these looming towers to actually come up and seat themselves or stand right next to these big terracotta vases and then put their faces right inside and scream at the top of their lungs. It's time to let go. And so wedged between all of these monolithic towers, you've now got this space that goes from being impersonal to inviting you to come in, to interact, to engage, to even touch the artwork, and then to unleash your emotions through it. It's telling you it's okay to be emotional, to be expressive, to even maybe show some vulnerability in an area of the city that usually feels cold and claustrophobic and anonymous. It's not just buildings that are getting repurposed. Roadways are now also seeing new vision in terms of how they can embrace not just vehicle traffic, but also get repurposed to embrace a sense of community and interaction. So if I ask you, what's a road for? Well, your answer would be, it's a space for cars to travel down, obviously, right? Well, obviously that's important for any functioning city. But does it have to be all roads, all of the time? This is Robson Street. This is normally packed with cars for most of the year. It's right in the heart of the shopping district. But for the summer months, it turns into a pedestrianized plaza and an international design competition. So a call goes out around the world to different design teams for the best use of this block along the themes of connection. Connection between people and also between the people and the space. And they don't just do this for a weekend or a month. They do this for 4 months of the year. It gets shut down to vehicle traffic. So the winning team gets $40,000 to realize their project, and voila, your busy vehicle road is now a vibrant public square for 4 months of the year. So this is this year's winner, the Urban Reef. You can see it's a sort of ribbed, curving series of forms. There's shelving, so you can put your street food out. You can also see it's got framed shapes so that it encourages live performances from local musicians and artists. These are south-facing, so people can come and soak up the sun. Again, that's very important when you get it in Canada. In previous years, we've had everything from giant beanbags to big shag carpet ramps, all basically designed to encourage you to come out, get together in the middle of this street. Just around the corner is Granville Street. For most of the year, this is a pretty uninspiring commercial strip. I like to refer to it as the longest bus stop in the world. But have a look at the difference over here on the other side. So in the summer months, every weekend it gets completely shut down to vehicle traffic, and it turns into this amazing marketplace and festival space. And so again, we are embracing community. We are encouraging non-vehicular methods of transportation downtown. We are supporting the local economy. The only thing that's missing here is the vehicles. So what do these transformations show? They show that art and culture can have a space in the buildings of the busy downtown core. It shows that vehicles can play second fiddle to human interaction and engagement, to non-vehicular modes of transportation. And I think that's beautiful, but it's not enough. We now have to take that creativity and channel it into finding new ways for sustainability. So again, we need to repurpose these spaces not just in ways that benefit the citizens, but also the environment. Urban agriculture is a great example of people going and finding these old building sites, old parking lots that are disused, and turning them into urban farms. But I'd like to look at another example, the humble lawn. So what is a lawn? What is a front or a backyard? It's the private green space for the recreation and the leisure of the homeowner. If you're lucky enough to grow up with a yard, it's basically a territorial extension of your house. If your house is your castle, then logically your yard is like your moat. You just need to replace the water and the alligators with barbecues and lawn bowling sets. But I recently moved to a new neighborhood. And on one of my first walks, I was very pleasantly surprised when I saw small-scale commercial agricultural production happening on people's private front lawns. I was so intrigued, I had to email these people to find out what was going on. So meet Ruth and Katie. They grow organic produce both for their shareholders and for the market, and they do it on people's front lawns who have volunteered that space. Now, you might be wondering, why would I give up my lawn? People have very different motivations. For some, it's environmental. For other people, it's economic. Some are young families. They really like having their children engaged with food production, right up close and personal. And other people, well, they're just plain lazy. And they're quite happy to have someone else come along, take care of their lawn, their garden for them, and at the end of the day, they get a whole bunch of free food. No matter what the motivation, what's bringing these people together is, well, they are supporting the local economy now in a sustainable way. They're also supporting local food security. They're eating a lot of very healthy food now that they weren't before. And the common bond here is they're all turning these water-wasting, chemical-drenched, unproductive sites into edible space. Thanks. I should mention also, this is all transported to market using bicycles with big trailers as well. There's no fossil fuels being burned in this production. Now, this is happening in Canada. So the growing season is about 18 to 20 weeks of the year, from June to October. Imagine what you could do on the lawns of Jacksonville with your growing season. Finally, I'd like to look at one last neighborhood. It's the newest residential area of the city, Olympic Village. It's going to house about 16,000 people by the year 2020, and it's employing all kinds of amazing green technologies. They are doing things like harvesting their rainwater to use to flush their toilets. They are harnessing energy from the heat that comes off their sewage pipes. There's just way too many innovations going on to cover today. So I'd like to instead focus on one very specific space here, Hinge Park. Hinge Park, for the last 100 years, was a steel factory. When most of the traditional areas or industries in the area went into decline, it looked like this. This is actually just next door. Now, I was a pretty mischievous teenager, and me and my friends used to spend a lot of time exploring these old derelict factories, looking for old industrial relics when we were younger. Today, it's a children's playground. It's also a wetlands habitat, and it's also a zero-energy, open-air water treatment plant. So when they were redeveloping the site, because of a century of heavy industrial use, it was very contaminated. They had to excavate a huge amount of soil and get down to a great depth to remove all of that contamination. That also created a unique opportunity. There's now space to put large cisterns deep beneath the surface into which would flow all of the stormwater or rainwater runoff in the area. They then covered that with this recreated wetlands habitat. And so as this waterway meanders through the neighborhood, all of the plant life, the insects, the microbes, they act as the kidneys to the area. They actually cleanse and filter the water before it flows back out into the ocean nearby. Today, this wetlands is thriving. It's full of amphibians, of bird life, and just last April, it passed the ultimate Canadian wetlands test when a beaver swam in and took up residence. The wetlands also circles a children's playground, which has all kinds of features like all these channels for water and this central pipe that has a large yellow button. What child could walk by a large yellow button without pushing on it? Well, this actually draws the water up from those cisterns. It cycles it around the water features of the playground and then walks it through the wetlands, where it's then filtered again and goes out back into the ocean. So the children's play is what is actually powering this whole cycle of bioregeneration. So what do all these changed spaces share? The common bond here is the shift in values that motivated us to re-envision these spaces in ways that embrace creativity and sustainability. And these were just a few short examples, but the potential is as limitless as our imaginations. So now, it's time for you to go out into your cities and to start looking at spaces that you take for granted. It might be parking lots, bridges, whatever, and start to look at them differently. Start to look at them sideways. Unknow them. And now let's bring new vision to old spaces. Thank you.